Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and fellow global citizens, it's an honour to address you today on an issue of fundamental importance to our shared future. The need to build a global civil society that guarantees survival human rights, driven by more conscious leaders and servant leadership. In a world increasingly shaped by economic disparity, political instability, and rapid technological change, one urgent question remains. How do we ensure that every person has access to the fundamental rights needed to survive and thrive? The answer lies in a leadership philosophy that prioritizes service over power and responsibility over authority and collective well-being over individual gain. Servant leadership. Before we explore how servant leadership can ensure survival human rights, let's first understand its origins, its principles, and how it links to a more conscious approach to leadership. The most recent Edelman Trust Barometer shows that fear that leaders lie to us is at an all-time high, and that the wealthy's selfishness causes many of our problems. Now, this is not a unique result. It is a trend that's worsened in recent years. A conscious leader is one who's deeply aware of their own motivations and the impact on those they lead, acting with integrity and focusing on a greater good. The mindset of being a conscious leader must be the starting point for servant leadership. Now, in truth, most leaders aspire to the position of leadership because of power, income, and influence that they gain. The desire to help others is rarely a high motivation. So, if the motivation for greater leadership is not to serve others, then the desire for power and influence can only really be for one's own gain. And of course, that's exactly what we see all too often across political and corporate landscapes. The concept of servant leadership was first introduced by Robert Greenleaf in the 1970s. He envisaged a leadership model that doesn't prioritize command and control, but rather serving others first, ensuring that the well-being of people comes before personal ambition or institutional power. Throughout history, the most transformational leaders, from Mahatma Gandhi to Nelson Mandela to Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, have all embodied this principle. There are 10 characteristics that guide servant leadership. Listening deeply to the needs of others. Understanding, empathizing, and accepting others. Helping others overcome historical trauma in the aid for wholeness. Understanding issues related to power, ethics, and values. And in contrast to authoritarian leadership, a reliance on convincing others based on the merit of an argument rather than coercion or manipulation. Thinking beyond the day-to-day realities or constraints and dreaming big. Understanding lessons from the past and the present reality and the likely future. And believing that people have an intrinsic value beyond their intangible contributions as workers. And lastly, a desire to create a true community across diverse institutions. I can think of no better list of characteristics to guide the actions of leaders globally right now than the principles of servant leadership, which are deeply rooted in morality and integrity and conscious leadership. Based on this legacy, Henry Keonho Kim, the chairman of the ASEA Foundation, has further developed the concept of servant leadership as an essential model for guaranteeing survival human rights in a modern world. This philosophy teaches us that true leadership is not about winning, it's about serving. And the moment that serving becomes the means to gain power or compete for influence, it ceases to be true service. Ladies and gentlemen, look, we stand at a turning point in history. The decisions we make now will shape the future of humanity. And if we fail to guarantee survival human rights, we risk a world where inequality deepens and suffering increases and conflicts escalate. However, if we embrace servant leadership, we can build a society where every person is given the fundamental rights to survive and thrive. We must lead with empathy, serve with integrity, and work together to build a truly global society where no one is left behind. The path forward is clear: a global civil society that guarantees survival human rights must be driven by servant leadership. Thank you.